What if the man you've known your whole life as a simple, quiet father was hiding a secret buried deep beneath night shifts, overdue bills, and a love so powerful it rewrote your destiny? What if your mother, long gone, left behind a truth so dangerous it could change everything about who you are? A mysterious envelope appears. A voice from the past warns. Don't trust the man who shows up next. And then, someone knocks on the door. If you think this is just another emotional story, think again. This is a journey of legacy, sacrifice, and a secret bloodline that was never meant to be uncovered. Collision want to know what was in that final letter? Who was watching Emily all along? Backhand index pointing right, watch till the end. You won't believe where it leads. And if you love deep, cinematic stories full of twists, emotion, and mystery, subscribe now and drop your theory in the comments. Who is Daniel Morrow, and what is Emily's true purpose? The story starts quiet, but it doesn't stay that way. The streetlight flickered above as the man leaned against his dusty pickup truck, wiping grease from his fingers with a rag that had long forgotten the color white. He checked his watch, 11:57 p.m. Another night, another shift. He looked up at the tiny second-floor window where a faint glow still spilled through the curtains. Her desk lamp. She was studying again. Just a little longer, baby, he whispered under his breath, tightening his jacket as the night wind brushed his face. Nobody knew what James did at night. Not his neighbors in the quiet Ohio suburb. Not the church folks who saw him every Sunday. Not even his daughter, Emily, the straight-A senior gunning for a full ride to NYU. He told her he was consulting for a trucking company. Flexible hours, decent pay. It was easier that way. Easier than explaining why he walked into that old manufacturing plant on 5th Avenue 6 nights a week. Why his knees ached and his back screamed every morning. Inside that plant, the machines never slept. Neither did the men who stood beside them. James clocked in, nodded silently at the crew, and slipped on his steel-toed boots. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid, and it paid just enough. Every paycheck, he split 3 ways. Mortgage, groceries, Emily's college fund. The last one always got the biggest cut. At home, Emily never asked too many questions. She saw the tired in his eyes, but chalked it up to age. He smiled through the fatigue, told her to keep pushing, to keep dreaming. What she didn't see were the letters, the ones he kept in a drawer under the sink. Final notices. Past due bills. One from the electric company with bold red letters, service interruption pending. But the tuition deposit? That was paid. The suspense lingered like steam on a cold window. Would he make it another month? Could he keep the lights on and her dream alive? Then came the night she woke up at 2:14 a.m. She went downstairs for water. He wasn't home. Curious, she glanced outside. The pickup was gone. Emily squinted at the calendar. Tuesday. Truck consulting at this hour? The next night, she stayed up. Waited behind the curtains. 2:05 a.m. Still no truck. So she did what any determined teenager would do. She followed him, borrowed her friend's car, kept the lights off, and trailed the old Ford through back roads and warehouse alleys. Her heart pounded louder with every turn. Finally she saw it. His truck, parked beside a crumbling brick building under a flickering sign. Midland Steelworks. She parked down the block. Waited. Watched. An hour passed. Then she saw him, covered in grime, carrying something heavy across the loading bay. Her world shifted. She didn't cry, not yet. But the questions crashed like waves. How long had this been going on? Why hadn't he told her? What else was he hiding? That night, she didn't sleep. She didn't confront him either. Not yet. Instead, she made coffee the next morning. Black, just how he liked it. He blinked in surprise when he walked in. "You're up early," he said, setting down his lunchbox. "You okay?" She smiled. "Yeah, just had a weird dream." But he saw something different in her eyes. A kind of knowing. He hesitated. Then his phone buzzed. He checked the screen. Paused. His face went pale. Emily caught it. "Dad." "What is it?" James stared at the screen like it was a message from another world. He didn't answer. Dad, she said again more firmly. He slowly turned the phone over, face down on the counter, and looked at her. Tired.
Exposed.
It's nothing, he said too quickly. She tilted her head. Was it from work? He nodded, but it wasn't convincing. Which work? She asked softly. He blinked. A pause hung between them, thick like morning fog. Then he looked away. The plant, he said finally. They're cutting hours. Her heart sank. He was already working himself raw. What would that even mean? But we're okay, he added quickly. I've got some savings. We're fine. He smiled. That same soft lie he'd given her for years. Emily didn't push. She just nodded and walked out. But inside, something had changed. Later that afternoon, while he was asleep on the couch, his boots still on, snoring softly, she went into the kitchen, opened the drawer under the sink, and saw them. Envelopes, receipts, debt letters stacked like a quiet scream, and a folder, labeled in blue ink, Emily's dream. Inside were bank slips, each deposit dated after midnight. She pressed her lips together, holding back the wave building in her chest. Outside, a lawnmower buzzed from the neighbor's yard. Some kids rode past on bikes. The world went on. But Emily stood frozen in that kitchen, gripping the folder, every page a silent confession. That night, she didn't wait behind curtains. She sat at the dinner table when he walked in, dirt on his face, shirt soaked in sweat.
Hi, she said.
He smiled. But when he saw the folder on the table, his smile faded. You went in the drawer. She nodded. He sat slowly. Didn't speak. I just wanted to know, she said. How long have you been doing this?
He sighed.
A while. For me, she whispered.
His jaw tightened.
For us. The silence stretched. Emily swallowed hard. I applied for a scholarship last month. I didn't tell you, 'cause I didn't think I'd get it. James looked up. His hands clenched on the table. It came today, she said. He blinked. Did you? She nodded, eyes glassy.
Full ride.
NYU. James stared, his breath caught halfway between a sob and a laugh. He leaned back, covering his face with his hands. But she wasn't finished. There's something else. He dropped his hands. Her voice wavered. I've been offered a spot in their early summer program, but it starts next week. In New York. James didn't move. I'll need to leave by Saturday. The room fell quiet again. The old clock above the fridge ticked once, twice, and then came a knock on the front door. 3 slow, heavy knocks. James flinched. So did Emily. They both turned toward the door, unsure, the knock still echoing faintly in the hallway. He stood slowly, joints stiff from the shift, and walked to the door. Emily rose too, her pulse racing, unsure why the air suddenly felt heavier. James opened the door halfway. On the porch stood a man in a navy windbreaker, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. Mr. Lawson, he asked, glancing at a small form attached to the board. Yeah, James said cautiously. The man gave a slight nod. I'm with Midland Corporate Accounts. Just need you to sign here. End of employment agreement. As of tonight, the plant is shutting down. James froze. Emily stepped forward, hearing every word. What? James asked. The man didn't blink. Corporate sent the notice this morning. Immediate closure. You'll receive your last check by Friday. Severance, limited. James stood like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. The man handed him the clipboard and a pen. You need a copy? James shook his head, signed, and handed it back. The man left without another word. The door closed quietly behind him. James stood there, back to Emily, shoulders low. Dad, her voice broke. He didn't turn. Everything I've been doing, he said, barely audible, was for that one goal. One last stretch. And I thought I had more time. She walked over slowly. You gave me more than time, Dad. He turned now, eyes tired but alive. I can't let you leave while all this is falling apart. You're not letting me, she said gently. You raised me too. The silence felt warm this time. But underneath it, something fragile stirred. A question. a worry. What would happen now? And then she reached into her backpack, pulled out a white envelope, and handed it to him. He opened it. His eyes scanned the letter, and then his lips parted slightly. A check. A large one. I deferred the scholarship payment, she said. They give housing stipends in advance if you request. I figured we'd need it. He looked at her. But before he could finish, his phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. He answered, still staring at her. A voice crackled through. James Lawson? This is Claire Martin from Riverbend Welding Services. You applied 2 months ago. We're opening a second site. Would you be available for night shifts, starting Monday?
He didn't speak.
Just closed his eyes for a beat, and then looked at his daughter. Emily held her breath. James pressed the phone tighter to his ear. Yes, he said. I'm available. Claire's voice smiled through the line. Great. We'll email the details by tonight. First shift starts 10 p.m. Monday. Congratulations. He hung up slowly. Emily looked at him, searching, waiting. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then finally, you knew something like this might happen. She gave a small nod. I saw how much you were giving up. I had to do something too. James stared at her, this girl who somehow became stronger than he ever expected. His voice cracked. You were supposed to just be a kid. I can't be, she whispered. Not when I know what you're carrying. He reached for her hand, calloused fingers wrapping around hers. Outside, the sun had just begun to set. That soft golden light poured in through the windows, brushing everything in a warm hush. He exhaled slowly. You're leaving Saturday? She nodded, her lips trembling. But only if you say I should. He looked down at the check again. At the letter. At the last 20 years of sacrifice, buried in every page, every hour worked past midnight. He smiled, faint but full. You're going. Then the house phone rang. They both looked at it. James walked over, picked up the receiver. His brow furrowed. Hello, he said. Emily watched as his face changed. Not fear.
Not joy.
Something in between. He didn't speak for a full 30 seconds. Then he said quietly,
Yes.
She's here. But how did you know? James held the phone a little tighter. Emily stepped closer, sensing the shift in his voice. He turned toward her, covering the receiver with his hand. It's a woman, he whispered. She said she's been trying to reach you but didn't want to go through the school. Emily's heart skipped. She took the phone slowly, placing it against her ear. Hello. A pause. Then a warm, unfamiliar voice. Emily Lawson? This is Professor Helen Ward from NYU. I'm the director of the Early Entrance Mentorship Program. Emily blinked. Yes, hi. I didn't know you'd. How did you? The woman chuckled gently. Your essay made it to our departmental board. One of the most honest, raw, and selfless things we've read in years. Emily glanced at her dad, his eyes searching hers, silently asking what was happening. Helen continued. We've created a new initiative for students like you, high achievers from undersupported families. You've been selected. Emily felt her throat tighten. I already got the scholarship. There's more, Helen said. This includes a year-long mentorship, housing through winter, a small monthly stipend, and a chance for one family member to visit during the fall term, all expenses covered. Emily's eyes welled. Wait, really? You've earned it, Helen replied. You and your father. Emily couldn't speak. Her voice caught behind the wave rising inside her. Helen added, softly, I lost my father when I was young. He worked nights too. Your story, it hit home. Emily swallowed hard. Thank you. As she hung up, she turned to James slowly. His expression said everything, confused, proud, overwhelmed. She handed the phone back and didn't say a word, just reached out and hugged him. He held her tightly, arms shaking, saying nothing. Then, a rustle outside the window. Emily pulled back slightly. Did you hear that? James nodded. They walked quietly to the window and peeked through the blinds. A white envelope sat on the front step. No footprints. No car in sight. James opened the door and picked it up. his name written in thick black ink. Inside, a check. No letter. No return address. Emily stared at it, stunned. James turned the envelope over, then again nothing. Who? She started. Then, far off down the street, under the orange streetlight, a man stood watching.
Tall.
Still. Hands in his coat pockets. James stepped out onto the porch. But just then the man turned and walked away. James stepped down from the porch, the wooden steps creaking beneath his boots. Hey, he called out, his voice sharp but uncertain. The man didn't stop, didn't even look back, just disappeared down the street, swallowed by shadow and wind. Emily stood behind him, arms folded tightly against the breeze. Who was that? She asked. James shook his head slowly. No idea. He looked again at the check. It wasn't small. In fact, it was almost the exact amount he'd just lost with Midland's closure. His fingers gripped the edges. Why would someone? Emily was already moving. She grabbed her phone, stepped inside, and pulled up the neighborhood app. Next door, Facebook, even the local bulletin boards. No alerts. No posts. Nothing about visitors or strange men. James came back in, locking the door behind him. He placed the check on the table like it was fragile. I've seen him before, he murmured. Emily turned sharply. When? James sat down, eyes distant. A long time ago, at your mom's funeral. Emily froze. She hadn't heard him speak about that day in years. There was a man standing way back. Didn't speak to anyone. I thought maybe he was one of her coworkers. Never found out. Emily's voice came out small. You think it's him? James didn't answer right away. He looked at the check again. Back of the paper. Watermark. Real. Then he reached into a nearby drawer and pulled out an old photo album. Dust scattered in the air as he opened it. He flipped page after page. Birthdays, Christmas mornings, scraped knees, and soccer games. And then, the funeral photo. Someone had snapped it from a distance, unposed, raw. James pointed. There, in the far background, a tall man in a dark coat. Even blurry, the resemblance was unmistakable. Emily leaned in. Who is he? James stared at the photo, heart thudding louder with every passing second. I think he knew your mother. Emily sat down beside him. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the windows like a whisper. James slowly closed the album, and the phone rang again. James stared at the ringing phone. This time, it wasn't the house line. It was his cell. He picked it up from the counter. Unknown number again. Emily watched, breath caught in her chest. He answered slowly. Hello? A silence. Then, Mr. Lawson, the voice said.
Deep. Calm.
Familiar in a way James couldn't place. You received the envelope? James swallowed.
Yes.
Who is this? Another pause. Then the man said, I knew your wife. A long time ago. James's grip tightened. How long ago? The voice didn't hesitate. Before you met her. College. We were close. Emily stepped forward, trying to hear. James turned on the speaker. The voice continued. She spoke about you once. Said you were the man she was meant to end up with. She was right. James blinked hard. His jaw clenched. Why now? Why the check? He asked. Because she asked me to, the man said. James froze. What do you mean?
The voice was steady.
Before she passed, she sent me a letter. Said if anything ever happened and you were struggling, especially when Emily was ready for college, that I should help. Emily gasped quietly. James looked at her, stunned. The voice added, She made me promise not to interfere unless it was necessary. You've done everything alone. You didn't ask, but now it's necessary. James leaned against the table for support. The man spoke again more gently. She loved you both. I respected that. Emily whispered, Why didn't you come forward before? The man's tone changed slightly. Some debts can't be repaid with words, only with silence and timing. There was another pause. I won't contact you again. The rest is yours to carry. Tell Emily her mother would be proud.
Click.
The call ended. The room was silent, except for the hum of the fridge and the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. James sat down slowly, staring at the phone in his hand. Emily stood still, her eyes filled with questions and tears she didn't know how to hold back. He reached for the photo album again, flipped to an old picture of her mother, smiling in the sun, eyes shining like she knew something no one else did. Then Emily spoke softly. "Dad, do you think Mom knew what this moment would look like?" James didn't answer. He just nodded once. And then, the front porch light flickered. James looked up at the porch light. It flickered once.
Twice.
Then went out completely. Emily turned toward the door, a chill crawling up her spine. James stood, walked slowly to the front window, and pulled the curtain back just enough to peek outside. The street was empty. No cars. No movement. Just the soft glow of other porch lights down the block, steady and calm, except theirs. He flicked the light switch inside the entryway. Nothing. Emily stepped beside him. "Power surge?" she asked. James shook his head. "Maybe. Or maybe just old wiring." But something in his voice said he didn't quite believe that. Then his eyes dropped to the floor. A small envelope, smaller than before, had been slid under the front door. So quietly neither of them heard it come in. He bent down slowly, picked it up. No name, no stamp, just one word on the front in neat handwriting. "Soon." Emily stepped back. What does that mean?" James opened the envelope. Inside, a single photograph. It was a picture of Emily, taken from behind, walking into her high school. Recent. Maybe just days ago. She stared at it in disbelief. "I never saw anyone," she whispered. "No one was there." James turned the photo over.
A time. A date.
And beneath it, a line. "The next choice matters." His fingers trembled slightly. This wasn't charity anymore. This wasn't just help from the past. This was something else. Emily took the photo from his hand, looking for clues. "Is someone watching us?" James said nothing. But he was already walking to the closet, reaching behind the coats, pulling out an old lockbox he hadn't touched in years. Inside,
A key.
a folded map, and a letter addressed to him, in his wife's handwriting, still sealed, never opened. He looked at the envelope like it had waited for this very night. Emily sat down slowly, heart pounding. "Dad." He turned the letter over in his hands, and whispered, "She told me to only open this when I didn't know what else to do." James sat at the kitchen table, the unopened letter resting between his hands like it carried a heartbeat of its own. Emily watched him, her arms wrapped around herself, unsure whether to speak or just let the moment breathe. The house was still. Even the wind had stopped, like everything was waiting for that seal to break. James exhaled, then carefully slid his thumb beneath the flap. The paper inside was yellowed at the edges but smooth, untouched. He unfolded it slowly. His eyes moved across the words, and for a moment, he didn't blink. Emily stepped closer. He began reading aloud, his voice shaking. Asterisk, "My love, if you're reading this, it means life has pushed you into a corner, one I never wanted you to face alone. Asterisk. Asterisk, you've always been strong, stubborn, proud. You'd bleed before you'd ask for help. But there are some paths we're not meant to walk alone, especially when it comes to Emily. Asterisk." He paused, swallowing hard, then kept going. Asterisk, "I knew there might come a time when everything you built starts to crack. If that time came, I wanted to give you something I never had, a way forward, even in the dark." Asterisk. Asterisk, there's a man. His name is Daniel Morrow. I met him long before you. He made mistakes.
Disappeared.
But he owed me a promise. That if I ever needed help, real help, he'd be there. Asterisk. Emily's breath caught. James looked up. "Morrow." Emily furrowed her brow. "Is that the man from the call?" He nodded slowly, then looked back down at the letter. Asterisk, if this reaches you, I can only hope he kept his word. Asterisk. Asterisk, you may not trust him. You shouldn't. But you can use him.
He knows things about my past.
About our family. About Emily's future. Asterisk. James froze at the next line. Asterisk, what's coming may not be just about money. Asterisk. He stopped reading. Emily leaned forward. What does she mean? He read the rest silently, then slowly folded the letter again. His hands were trembling now.
She knew something.
Something she never told either of us. Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. What's coming, Dad? James stood up, walked to the counter, and opened the map from the lockbox. It was hand-drawn.
Rough.
Marked with an X just outside of town, near the old freight yard where the rail line split. And scribbled in the corner, in faded pencil. If it all falls apart, start here. Then, for the first time that night, they heard a car engine outside. Slow. Deliberate. Both of them turned to the window.
Headlights.
Idling at the curb. Not moving. Not honking. Just waiting. James moved to the window carefully, pulling the curtain aside just enough to see, without being seen. The car sat there. Black. Unmarked. Windows tinted so dark they reflected nothing but the streetlight above. Still no movement. Emily stood behind him, clutching the map. Is it him? She asked. I don't know, James said.
His voice was flat.
Focused. Then the passenger door of the car opened, just a crack. From the gap, a single envelope was tossed onto the sidewalk. The door shut. The engine purred, but the car didn't move. James opened the front door slowly. Wait, Emily whispered. But he stepped out anyway, heart pounding, eyes locked on the envelope like it was radioactive. He bent down, picked it up. No markings. Just like before. He walked back inside without a word and closed the door. Emily was already beside the table. Map unfolded again. He opened the envelope. Inside, a flash drive. No note. No explanation. Just the drive. James looked at her. You have your laptop? Emily nodded, already pulling it from her backpack. They plugged the drive in. It clicked once. Loaded. A single video file. Untitled MOV. James hovered over the play button. Glanced at Emily. You sure? He asked. She gave a single nod. He clicked. The video opened with static, just a hiss, then cleared. A dimly lit room. Concrete walls. A single desk. Someone walking into frame. Emily's breath hitched. It was her mother. Younger. Hair shorter. Eyes sharper. She looked straight into the camera. If you're seeing this, she said, it means the world I built for you is beginning to break. James leaned in. His lips parted. The air in the room seemed to vanish. Her voice was calm, practiced, like she'd rehearsed this for years. There are things I never told you, James.
About me.
About Emily. About what was set in motion before she was even born. Emily's hands began to shake. The woman on the screen continued. You're not in danger, not yet. But she is. And the answer starts with the name Daniel Morrow. James froze. The screen glitched slightly. Then her eyes narrowed. And whatever you do, don't trust the man who shows up next. Then, a knock at the door. 3 sharp, precise raps. James stood frozen, eyes still locked on the screen. Emily's head turned slowly toward the door, every hair on her arms standing up. The knock came again, louder this time. 3 perfect strikes. James reached over and slammed the laptop shut. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily whispered. She said not to trust the next man. James nodded slowly. I know, but his feet moved anyway. Quiet, careful, toward the door. Emily grabbed his arm. Don't open it. He glanced down at her, his jaw clenched, muscles tight with the weight of everything he didn't understand. But he didn't pull away. Instead, he motioned her toward the stairs. Go to your room. Lock the door. No, she said, firm. He stared at her, and for a moment, saw her mother, that same fire behind the eyes. Then the knock came a third time. Slower, like a dare. James took a breath, stepped to the door, pressed his eye to the peephole. A man stood outside. Tall, suit jacket, clean-shaven, hands behind his back. Not Daniel. Someone else. James didn't open it. Who are you? He said through the door. The man didn't raise his voice. I'm here for Emily. James stiffened. You're not taking her anywhere. The man spoke calmly. I'm not here to take her. I'm here to warn her. Emily stepped closer, against James's orders. The man continued. She doesn't know what she is. But others do now. And they're moving faster than you think. James gripped the doorknob tight. What does that mean? A pause. Then the man said, You have 36 hours before someone else knocks on this door. He leaned in, his voice low. And they won't knock 3 times. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. No car. No noise. Just disappeared into the dark. Emily whispered, Dad, what does he mean? What I am? James didn't answer. Not right away.
He looked down at the map again.
Then back at the laptop. And finally, he opened the letter from the lockbox one more time. Reread the last 3 lines. She'll begin to feel it soon. Don't let her face it alone. The answers are buried where the tracks split. His voice was barely above a breath. We're going to the yard. The morning came slow and gray, skies smeared with the kind of overcast that made the world feel paused. James and Emily stood in the driveway, the truck idling, duffel bags in the back seat, map folded neatly between them. Neither said much. Emily clutched her mother's letter in one hand, her backpack in the other. Her eyes kept drifting to the horizon, to where the rail lines disappeared into the trees outside of town. James glanced at her as he turned the ignition fully. You still sure about this? She nodded once. I have to know. The truck rolled out of the driveway, gravel crunching beneath the tires. They drove in silence for nearly 20 minutes. Past cornfields, old billboards, shuttered gas stations. Until finally, they reached the chain-link fence surrounding the freight yard. The gates hung open. No signs. No guards. Just wind moving through empty rail cars like a ghost. James pulled in slowly, the tires thumping over the old tracks. The X on the map pointed to an abandoned storage building near the west line. They parked behind it, got out, and walked with cautious steps. Emily held the key from the lockbox tight in her fist. The building's rusted door groaned open. Inside, dust, silence, the faint smell of oil and time. In the back corner, a steel hatch in the floor. James knelt down, brushing aside the grime. No lock, he murmured. Emily stared at it. Her heart thudded in her ears. James opened the hatch. Beneath, a stairwell. Concrete. Cold. Leading down into the dark. A dim light flickered below. They looked at each other. James went first, Emily right behind him. Each step down felt like descending into another lifetime. One that had been waiting for them. At the bottom, the corridor opened into a small room. And, in the center of that room, a glass case. Inside it, another letter, a recording device, and a folder with Emily's name on it, in her mother's handwriting. Emily stepped forward, hands trembling. James didn't stop her. She opened the case, lifted the letter. On the outside, in ink that had barely faded. You're ready now. Emily looked back at her father, tears starting to well in her eyes. And then she opened the letter. Emily unfolded the letter with care, each crease revealing more of her mother's looping, elegant handwriting. James stood beside her, silent, steady, the way he always had been. She began to read aloud, her voice quiet, caught somewhere between wonder and ache. My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, then the world has begun to ask questions you were never supposed to answer alone. Asterisk, you were born under a promise. Not to greatness or power, but to protect something hidden deep within your bloodline. Something older than money, deeper than legacy. Asterisk. Asterisk, your gifts may not make sense yet, but they will. Asterisk. Asterisk, the memory flashes. The instinct. The way you sometimes feel something before it happens that's not imagination. It's inheritance. Asterisk. Emily looked up, eyes wide, searching her father's face for answers he didn't yet have. He gently touched her arm. Keep going, he said. She looked down again. Asterisk, your father never knew the full story, not because I didn't trust him, but because I knew he would have tried to carry it all alone. This was meant to be yours. Asterisk. The folder inside this case holds records, names, maps, and a code to a vault in New York. The same city you dreamed of. It's not just your future. It's your past waiting to be unlocked. Asterisk. The man who came to you, Daniel, may not be your enemy, but he serves forces that won't stop. Not until they find what I hid. Asterisk. Emily's voice cracked. She pressed the paper to her chest. James opened the folder. Inside were files, names, photos, locations. Some marked in red ink, others with circles and arrows. At the bottom, a birth certificate. Emily's. But under Mother's name, it wasn't just Anna Lawson. There was a second name, Honora Vallon. James stared at it. I've never seen that name before, he said softly. Emily shook her head, heart pounding. She changed her identity. Which means someone was looking for her, James said. She picked up the recording device next, thumb hovering over the button. James gave her a slow nod. She pressed play. Her mother's voice came through again. Older now, more fragile. Asterisk, if this message is playing, it means the world is shifting. There will be people who come with smiles and stories, some with threats. Trust only those who would sacrifice sleep, pride, and time for your peace. Asterisk. That's your father. Asterisk when the time comes, and you'll have to decide whether to run or to lead. If you lead, you won't be alone. But you will be hunted. Asterisk. I loved you before you even had a name, and I've been protecting you long after I was gone. Whatever you choose it with courage. Because you were born from something unbreakable. Asterisk, and they'll never be ready for that. Asterisk. The recording clicked off. Silence. Only their breaths filled the small underground room. James stepped back, letting it all settle in. Emily stared down at her name, both names, trying to make peace with the past that had waited in the dark for her to grow up. Then her phone buzzed. One message. They're on the move. You have 24 hours. No number. No name. Just the words. Emily looked at James. He didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Then we leave tonight, he said. She nodded, slowly folding the letter. Dad, you don't have to come. He gave her a look. Kiddo, I didn't walk through 20 years of night shifts just to let you face the real darkness alone. They stood together in that cold room, surrounded by secrets, bloodlines, maps, and whispers from a woman who had loved them both fiercely. Outside, the wind had changed, and the storm was finally on its way. By nightfall, the truck hummed quietly along the edge of the freeway, taillights streaking through the dark like fireflies on a mission. Emily sat in the passenger seat, the folder on her lap, her mother's letter now folded carefully into the pocket of her jacket, close to her heart. She hadn't said much for the past hour. Neither had James. Some silence carries weight. This one carried legacy. Above them, the stars blinked out one by one, swallowed by thick clouds stretching across the sky like a curtain preparing for the next act. James gripped the wheel, eyes forward, jaw set in quiet resolve. He wasn't just a father now, he was a guardian of something far bigger than he ever imagined. Emily glanced sideways at him, her voice low. You really think I'm ready? He didn't look at her, just gave the smallest nod. You've always been ready. Even when I wasn't. She let those words sit a while. The GPS signaled an exit up ahead. She checked the map, the address of the vault etched clearly in her mother's faded handwriting. As they turned off the highway, the skyline of New York shimmered in the distance. Not the city of lights and dreams they'd once imagined, but something heavier now, full of buried truths and waiting shadows. James pulled over near a quiet overlook. Cut the engine. They sat there a moment, watching the city breathe in the distance. Then he turned to her. You can walk into that vault and change your life, he said. But what's in there? It might change everything. Emily looked at the city. I don't want to run from it anymore. He smiled faintly, the kind that carried all the pain and pride only a father could hold. I didn't raise a runner, he said. I raised a storm. They sat for another beat, letting the wind slip through the cracked windows. Then she opened the door, stepping out into the cool night air. Bag slung over her shoulder. folder in hand, eyes full of fire. James followed, quieter now, but just behind her, like always. And together, without a word more, they walked toward the vault, toward the truth, toward whatever came next. Under the city that never slept, a daughter carried a legacy forward, and the man who had worked through every night to give her light walked beside her into the dawn.